Way too often I mean Christians, we close ourselves off to the very people that Christ came to save. Jesus is in the business of loving all people, even those that scream at him and demand that he prove himself. Even one of his disciples was following Jesus around, watching him do all these miracles, and yet refused to believe that he had risen from the dead until he stuck his fingers in his wounds, right? How can we expect unbelievers to do this awful thing that's pervasive in the church? It drives me nuts. I hear people attack me with this all the time, and I've heard Christians say this, and it makes me just doubt. Talk about it like faith as it's like a leap in the dark type of a faith, like they just believe. I don't understand that. Faith is 100% not believing in something that I have no evidence of. If I didn't have any evidence of it, and if I hadn't thought it out logically, then of course I wouldn't believe that mess. I've seen so many Christians prove that they themselves don't believe what they're saying by their own actions. I use the analogy all the time about the lotto ticket winner. If you win $10 million, if you believe you win $10 million on a lotto ticket, you don't worry about spending the couple $1,000s that's in your account on the way to go cash in the lotto ticket, right? So if you Christians out there believe the promises, and you should believe the promises of God, right? If you believe the promises of God, you would act differently, right? How do you know that guy believes that he's won $10 million? The dude's ecstatic, right? And he's spending money like crazy. He's headed up there as soon as possible to get it, right? Well, if you believe that people around you are dying and going to hell, if you're not pouring yourself out to show them the love of Christ, I don't know that you believe that. I mean, I do not understand every single facet of reality, of the whole of reality. I cannot give an apology or be apologetics for every belief inside of Christendom, right? Faith fills in those gaps because I was convinced mentally way before my heart was convinced that Christ was real. So I believed in my head for years before I believed it with my heart. The difference between a head belief and a heart belief is you might believe that you need to that it's healthy for you to go work out and eat right and everything, right? A heart belief is when you actually go put in an hour at the gym every day and you put down the fatty cakes and you're eating some salads and all that. Faith fills in the gaps in between time where I can go study these things out, right? Like if somebody says to me, well, what's the deal with all the pain in the world, right? Well, at some point, I didn't know what the deal with all the pain in the world was, right? So I went and read about 14 books on it. The best one was C.S. Lewis, right? The Problem of Pain. Now, I mean, I understand it, but at that point in time, I didn't understand it. At that point in time, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, let me, that doesn't make sense. Let me go figure it out. So I stopped what I was doing. I go and I study this thing out, and then bam, now I can come back with an answer for it. I'm talking to one of my childhood friends right now about Christ, and he's an atheist. He's an agnostic atheist or whatever. He's a 6 on the scale, right? And he asked me a question that was very important to him. He said, "Is there any combination of words that I can give that would convince you that God does not exist," right? if I go and I say no, right? I know absolutely 100% for sure that that God exists. Then from that moment on, even if he agrees to talk to me, he's talking to a wall, right? So he might agree to talk to me just out of because he's, you know, a good guy or whatever, but he's not. He has nowhere to get in the conversation. Why do you want to talk to somebody who says there is absolutely no way that you can convince me of anything? It doesn't matter what proofs you bring. It doesn't matter what logic you spew. There's no possible way you can change. At that point, you're closing yourself off. This is no longer a conversation. We have to speak open-heartedly to non-believers, man. If we're out here being so arrogant to say there is absolutely no way, right? That is, first of all, you have to have absolute knowledge to be able to say something like that, and you can't be saying stuff like that. Even if you've seen God materialize and say, "You are my son," right? You could have been hallucinating and all that. What if he proved that you had an hallucination right then, and that whatever, you can't say that there's no combinations. Now he knows, and you know that it's gonna take an awful lot for me to convince him that God is real, right? And it's gonna take an awful lot for him to convince me that God is not real. But it is possible. I mean, come on, let's be real. I can understand if your faith is this leap in the dark faith, why you wouldn't want to be scrutinized, because that faith isn't really faith, and if it's scrutinized, it's gonna crumble. My advice to you would be to obey 1 Peter 3:15 that says, "But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." You know what gentleness and respect is? In love. That's what he's talking about. Do it in Christ, in love, right? So you have to, if you're not prepared to offer a valid, thoughtful defense of what you believe, I don't think you got a substantial belief. And you need to study to show yourself approved, right? And no matter what, I'm kind of call to action, rebuking some people right now. But do what you doing in love, right? Go out there and find Christ. See him. Let your faith be a strong faith, and you will win people to Christ. When they see him inside of you, they come begging you for him. Have a good day.